and then as other people turn up, I will just admit them. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Dave. You may wish to change your view to speaker view.
Me? How do you?
Everybody.
Speaker view?
If you go to the corner, at the moment you're probably in gallery. If you go to the top right-hand corner or somewhere, it'll say you get a choice of view. Swap between gallery, which is lots of little squares, and speaker, which is a 1 square and 3 little ones. But it won't matter.
Right, well, if everybody's sitting comfortably, then I shall begin. Good evening, welcome to Saddleworth Eco Events. My name's Dave Sanderson and I'm one of the friends of Saddleworth Hydro. Tonight is the third of a series of 1-hour podcasts that we're organising that will explore how us local people can better look after our environment. In particular, practical things we can do to mitigate the climate and biodiversity crises. The talk will last for 20 to 30 minutes, followed by questions, so around an hour in total. Let me introduce our speaker for tonight. Sam Bolton from the City of Trees, Manchester City of Trees, used to be known as Red Rose Forest a long time ago. City of Trees works across Greater Manchester, including our area, primarily increasing the level of tree cover and the health of our woodlands and other green infrastructure. Sam's going to tell us all about the new tree and woodland strategy that's been developed for GM, the benefits trees provide, and then home in on what this means for Saddleworth and neighbouring areas. As I hope you all know, Saddleworth Hydro has got a sustainability fund that can make small grants available for local projects, which could include tree planting, management of community woodlands, and the enhancement of biodiversity. So, as Sam is speaking, have a think about whether there's anything that they are doing that you could potentially join in on, or any ideas concerning trees and woods that you may have, and which we or they could help with. In particular, of course, the critical question is places to plant the trees. There'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. If you want, you can post them while Sam is speaking by using the chat icon. That's the little speech bubble at the bottom of the screen. Just type your comments in or your question. We can see it and I'll choose some for discussion when his talk is completed. Don't forget to put your name or we won't know who it is, will we? So, Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Dave.
I'm just muting everybody and Sam will have to unmute himself.
What I'm going to do is start the presentation, but then I'll switch my screen off just so it doesn't stop things from buffering, because it can be a bit of a dodgy Wi-Fi connection in deepest, darkest Marsden where I am. I'm over the topper, as they say. Yeah, I'll start now though. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, and you can hear me, I guess, Alison.
Yes.
So I stole part of this presentation. It'll say his name on the start, but never mind. So the Greater Manchester Tree and Woodland Strategy was. Can you still hear me, Alison? Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, great. Sorry. The Greater Manchester Tree and Woodland Strategy is, the idea behind it is to develop some sort of evidence-based way of trying to make sure that we plant the right trees in the right places for the benefits of the people and the environment in Greater Manchester. There's a lot of work that went into it. So my presentation today is just to sort of go through how we develop this tree and woodland strategy, and as Dave said before, look at this data it's been put online, and it's an open data, and anybody can go and plant trees where they live. So it's quite a good tool, really. It's quite powerful, and it should be, people should find it interesting. So I'll run through how to use that at the end. But as I say, I'll just sort of go through the process of how we came to be, and introduce City of Trees a little bit as well. So, yep, as Dave said, City of Trees, it aims to transform woodlands, plant up into areas that aren't currently, that don't have trees on, the private sector, government, businesses, local communities, to improve their environment. We have a few different goals, headline goals really. So one is to plant 3 million trees across Greater Manchester in a generation. So that's bring a whole load of unmanaged woodlands into positive management, and just generally reconnect people to trees and woodlands, and try and instill a sort of a woodland culture within them. We're also part of the Northern Forest initiative. So this is a sort of a joint venture between a lot of the community woodlands across the north of England, that's come about through this initiative to plant trees in certain areas. So as Dave said before, if there's of your local area where you think that it would be beneficial to put trees, that's probably something we can help you with. So we cover all 10 districts of Greater Manchester. We only used to cover 6, so Bury, Bolton, Wigan, Salford, Tameside, and Manchester. Rochdale, Oldham, Tameside and Stockport used to be covered by the what they call the Pennine Edge Forest, which still does run, and a man called Fran Cummins at Rochdale tends to lead on a lot of that. But we do work in all 10 districts now, and work quite closely with all of them. So yeah, we might not have been as active in Oldham and Tameside as most of the other areas in the past. You'll see us a lot more now. So yeah, part of this this piece of work that we've done tries to influence local thinking and feed into strategies that take place, and we've got some good supporters like Andy Burnham who knows about our work and is supportive of it. And there's other initiatives that we work within. There's a GM wetland partnership, and we work within other organisations like the Trafford Countryside Management Partnership, and sort of larger, more strategic organisations. This is another document into the Greater Manchester Natural Capital Investment Plan, which again looks at not necessarily where trees can be planted to improve what we call ecosystem services, but generally currently where there is habitat, how that habitat can be improved to provide more ecosystem services. So again, just as a bit of a background, we carried out a tree audit in Greater Manchester based on what they call GIS data, so geographical information, which shows where all the trees are in and around Greater Manchester, and then look to build on that. So the year before last, we carried out what was called an iTree Eco Survey, which was a survey that was developed by the US Forestry Service, and it's been tailored to fit with a UK sort of UK measurements and different sort of pricing in pounds, that sort of thing. But what an iTree Eco Survey does is somebody goes out like these two people, and we had a big team of people across Greater Manchester going out and surveying trees, and so they measure the height of trees and the canopy cover and the the diameter of the trees. And what this does is it works out all of the different services that Greater Manchester's trees are providing for its people. So it looks at how much carbon stored within the trees. It looks how much water is intercepted by the trees to mitigate for flooding, and also gave us a good idea of what type of tree stock we had. So it's quite useful in terms of looking at things like ash dieback, which unfortunately is an issue. And so we have a good understanding of how many ash trees we have in Greater Manchester now, and also the age of those trees. So these were all the plots that we surveyed around Greater Manchester. It's quite a lot, some great ones, but some really rough ones as well. Some quite tricky sites, but it was good. It was good, and it turned out to be the second largest iTree eco survey in the whole world, after one in America. So it was a big survey. So yeah, it worked out that Greater Manchester has 15.7 tree canopy cover, which isn't great really compared to a lot of countries and a lot of cities across the UK, across the world. I'll move through these quite quickly because I'm more keen to get on the eco-service part of it, and there's a lot to go through. But so these were the most common species in Greater Manchester: hawthorn, sycamore, and oak. Yeah, so the trees sequester, rather intercept, I suppose is more the right word, 847 tons of pollutants out of the air each year, which is quite a lot. And I think generally in Saddleworth, you're not really too affected by air pollution, apart from maybe some of the, I guess, through parts of Upper Mill, through that where it gets clogged up and that, it's not great. But this generally looked more around the M60 and where particulate matter and PM 2.5 and other pollutants can be really into some of the mapping that we'll look at later. Looks at where you can plant trees to make that a bit better. So it looked at intercepting water. So over 1.5 million cubic meters of storm runoff was intercepted by trees in Greater Manchester. And looked at also sort of the benefits of trees. Now, in terms of trying to put a monetary value on that, and if these trees weren't there, what it would do, what people would have to spend to replace that. So it puts I think, is a really conservative estimate of £30 million on the amount of benefits that are provided. But generally, that's just with carbon sequestration, stormwater runoff, and pollution filtration. It's not everything else that trees provide to us in terms of benefits. I said before, it highlighted that we had over 1 million trees in Greater Manchester that were at risk from diseases that are out there now. So ash horse chestnut canker, which isn't great. Yeah, so this was the mix of species really that we had, and I can share this as well, Dave, this presentation. So if people want it, I can give it to you. You can put it on your website, or you said you had like you were looking to build up a library of things. So yeah, by all means you can have this, or I can send it to people. Like so don't worry about scribbling things down too much. So yeah, again, some of the tree species that were dominant across the landscape. So all our trees coming onto the strategy. So what Brian did, our GIS wizard, as he were, he first looked at all of the plantable land that was in Greater Manchester. So you'll notice around Oldham and Tameside, there's some really light green patches. Now, it's not that you couldn't put a tree on there, but what he's done is he's looked at where there's deep peat in those areas and thought, well, we don't really want to be planting it on peatlands and high moorland, so we'll take those out. And he had a whole list of different constraints as they were for tree planting, and he's layered those all over the Greater Manchester. Anywhere else that potentially you could get a tree in the ground, and that does include tarmac as well. So wide enough, and there wasn't going to be any problem in terms of the width of the footpath. And then he has included areas like that, but he did consider that if the path was too narrow, you wouldn't really want to put a tree in there. So, and things like motorways and that way you wouldn't plant on them, and major infrastructure that's been taken out. But generally this was the sort of starting block for where potentially we could plant across the district. So then, as I said, he mapped over lots of different data. So this is some University of Manchester research that looked at where was the highest levels of PM 2.5 particulate matter. So these are really fine bits of pollution, air pollution, that can sort of go through your liver and things like that, and really sort of get into your bloodstream and cause lots of problematic diseases and potentially cancers and things like that. So you can see the sort of circle. I don't know if you can see my arrow here that goes around. That's the MD. And so, yeah, what he did is he looked at all of the above legal World Health Organization levels, and then looked at the potential to plant trees in these areas to capture some of these particulates. So he looked at plantable parcels, and then also plantable parcels that were in and around schools in people's areas. And I think this is a really powerful piece of data that I think if you were a councillor, or you had it within your gig anywhere, if you knew that you could plant some trees that was going to stop young children from breathing in really sort of nasty particulates, then it's something we should be doing. So this is the sort of evidence-based tree planting data that we try to get together. And we've got a whole host of these really for each of the districts and each of the areas. So you can see in Oldham there is swathes where the M60 runs through the bottom of Oldham, and I guess this bit that's just below Oldham and into Tameside, this area here, I'm not sure, is that sort of Mottram bypass type way? I don't know. I don't know Tameside super well, but yeah. So as I said, this is it in a bit more detail. So again, illegal levels of PM 2.5, and then potential, and these greener areas are potential plantable areas that you could do it. And this was a school here, or in and around. So this comes up. This map here looks at again, it was University of Manchester work that looked at as global warming carries on, temperatures increase. It looked at where the highest temperatures are likely to be in Greater Manchester, and looked at where you could plant trees in and around densely populated areas that could cool those buildings and reduce the need for air conditioning. And believe it or not, we get there's a lot of housing associations in Greater Manchester where we've spoken to the managers of those sites, and they get a lot of complaints already, especially in sort of high-rise buildings where they really struggle with in summers with the temperature in the building. So hopefully we can do some targeted tree planting in and around these areas. And there are areas like that have been highlighted in Upper Mill that are potentially quite densely populated, where there would be some benefit of tree planting. So, but I'll look at that in more detail later. So this is a map of riparian tree planting opportunities. So this is where you could put trees to intercept water that would hopefully improve the water quality of the area. wider catchment planting. So again, intercepting water that's coming through the system. By planting and managing woodlands, you can increase the surface roughness, so an improved herb and shrub layer within the woodlands. And what that does, it slows the water down, and so in a sort of a flood peak, it reduces the amount of water that goes into the system, and hopefully reduces the storm flow peaks, mitigates or potentially reduces the potential for surface water flooding in areas, but also sort of catchment wide flooding. So yeah, this is the map for the surface water flooding. So these are communities that are at risk of surface water flooding, and again, there's been mapping that looks at where you can plant trees to help mitigate for that. Now, what we've also done is stacked all of those opportunities together, all on top of each other, and this map shows where you could the most benefits for you to or the most multiple benefits from planting trees. And again, this is a way of trying to target tree planting, so you get the most bang for your buck, as it were. But it doesn't rate the different tree planting opportunities. So really, if you're wanting to plant for a single reason or an individual reason, you want to be looking at those individual maps rather than this priority planting. But I think if you only had a certain amount of money, it's quite useful for planners and councils and people who are wanting to prioritize things in certain areas. And you can look at this at ward level if you wanted to, or yeah, and you'll see that in a minute. I'll just flip quite quickly. So these are some of the things that we're looking at. These are tree pits for surface water runoff in more built up areas. So you have what they call SUDS enabled street trees and collect water. So sustainable drainage systems, they're called, which are very good. And that is the end of the present, but it's not over, folks, don't worry. Like, let me see if I can stop sharing it. So if you just GM mapping data. So hopefully you can see this. Alison, can we see this?
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Yeah. I didn't jump in and out too much there, did I, whilst I was talking?
No, that was fine. Yeah, we didn't see you at all. We
Okay,
just saw
good.
your pictures.
Yeah. Okay. So let me come out of this or go back. Hopefully this will change. Yeah, there we are. Okay. So Alison, can you see the GM mapping on there in big letters?
I'm looking at a map of Upper Mill at the moment, or thereabouts, or Saddleworth. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, it's really frustrating when you're presenting and you don't know what other people can see. Yeah.
Yeah, there might be a bit of a lag in this. So the address for people, if they want to use this themselves, is GM mapping. If they just Google GM mapping, or they call it Odin's, GMODIN, which is Greater Manchester Open Data. Yeah, I don't know. That's what it, Gmail. And then if you click on Gmoding, view the map. Oh, says it's not happy.
I'm getting a message about network issues from you. Which I hope
Yeah, hopefully it's. You just have to give me a. Can you see me sort of working?
yeah, there's something coming up now.
Okay, that's great.
This looks more hopeful.
Yeah, on the right hand side, you have a list of a whole different amount. So it's really useful. You can look at crime statistics in Oldham if you wanted. If you're into history, there's a really good data set, which is called LiDAR. And what it does is it strips out all of the tree cover and shows you the topography that's underneath the trees, so you can look. Yeah, so there's lots of stuff to look at there. Sorry, someone's unmuted. But if you wanted tree opportunity mapping, if you go to geography and environment and ecology, the LiDAR data is in geography and geology. But if you go to environment and ecology, and then if you go all the way down, so this layer has local nature reserves, it has sites of biological importance, and here tree planting opportunities. If you click on this, you can look at all of the different ecosystem services that are being provided in and around Saddleworth and Oldham. So if we look at urban cooling, and then well, it takes a while sometimes. It's a bit because you've got quite a lot of. So this is greenfield. So I guess these are all plantable tarmac areas where, yes, because these are quite high density residential areas, they're going to be affected by increases in temperature. So this would give you an idea of where it would be best to plant trees, so street trees and or woodlands. And it's quite useful, really. You know, if you're a local association, you're a local council, you've got some good evidence for where best to do that. Let's see if I can show you a different one. Look at floodplain planting. Me and Alison looked at this before. A lot of people play football on these playing fields, so you can't really plant on there. We were saying that it might cause a bit of a stink, but so just to put a caveat to plant trees, they're just opportunities to plant trees. So it just shows essentially where would be the best place to plant them if you wanted to. So yes, that's where it is. That's how to use it. There's lots of other things on there as well, but just to sort of give you a bit of a plug, as it were, for City of Trees, we can mostly woodland planting, but potentially street tree planting, and wikis, so tools, equipment, guidance, on carrying out woodland management. And it's not just sort of physical management. We do quite a lot of so like sort of dementia friendly walks in and around woodlands, or we do a lot of sort of looking at trying to understand woodlands and their benefits from a social point of view as well. So yeah, tree ID walks, all that sort of thing. So if there's anything that you think that we could potentially help you with, would be, that's it. So yeah, I'll pass back to David. Dave, you're on mute still.
Sam, have you finished the formal talk now?
Yes.
Right, okay. So thank you very much for that. It was certainly very interesting to see the way the data feeds right down to the local area. It gives us potentially a way of getting some serious information behind any arguments we might want to make. But tell me, before we take anybody else's questions, do you know of any actual sites in Saddleworth and the surrounding areas where trees could be planted?
Sorry, just bear with me. I'll come off of, I'll start my video again. There we are. Yeah, so we do have a list of sites from Oldham that have been put forward for tree planting for this year. And yeah, I can. I'd have to speak to Oldham Council first, but I'm sure it'd be fine to share those with you. But yeah, I haven't got them to hand, Dave. But yeah, I can share them with the group, and they'll be, I should imagine, the majority of them, unless they're on really steep ground, they'll be open to the public to come along and plant trees at the same time if they wanted to get involved. So they're really good. They're really good fun days, and we have a brew and have a biscuit, and yeah, the more people that come along to them, it's really useful. And I think we were talking before, there is quite a few sites that are going to come forward through the RSPB as well, which will cover the Oldham area. So yeah, in the Clough Woodland where there's not high levels of peat, and they're not going to influence like predation for twite and things like that, you know. So these things are considered in terms of increasing COVID predation of twite. So yeah, as soon as I have the planting sites, yeah, I'll share them with you, Dave.
Well, I think that would be very, very useful, because there may be people who would like to get involved in helping plant or look after trees, but if they don't know the projects are going on, they can't do it, can they?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So do you publicise these opportunities through the local media at all?
Yeah. So generally they're on City of Trees website. So all of the events are on there, which is called Citizen Forester. That's our sort of community volunteering offer, as it were. But yeah, generally we try to use local press as well if there's something that's close to a local area. But the website and the Facebook page are probably the best places to follow and to get details of all the events. And there's going to be a lot. There'll be a lot this tree. Well, there would have been lots if there hadn't have been the restrictions for COVID. But we are opening them back up again now. So post the Greater Manchester lockdown that's happened today, and how we've digested that a bit more, and yeah, I'm sure people will be able to get along and do it. But having said that, we could probably just, if people wanted 2 or 3 trees and they like small trees and they wanted to plant them themselves, I'm sure we could drop some off for you. I drive through Upper Mill and Saddleworth all the time, or get the trains, probably best. I don't tend to drive, but I get the train or cycle through. So yeah, if people want a few whips, I can definitely drop them off, and you can do a bit of guerrilla planting here and there.
It's interesting you say that. When we had Incredible Edible talking about guerrilla vegetables last week.
Yeah, well, there we are. Yeah. So yeah, by all means.
Okay, now there's 1 or 2 questions cropping up here. There's one here from Richard Darlington talking about a large housing scheme that's going on, which is threatening to destroy some ancient woodland. This is not an unusual problem, of course. Richard asks, are you aware of these threats? This one in particular, but also threats like that in general?
Well, yeah, we do feed into the GMSF and the...
Can you just explain what that means for people not familiar with the terminology?
Sorry, the GMSF is the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework. So it's what was the plan for where Greater Manchester wanted to build houses across the districts. So if there was an allocation on a ancient semi-natural woodland site, City of Trees would have put a strong sort of, I don't know, strong comment towards the GMSF in relation to those. So yeah, we're always generally trying to dissuade the councils from building on certain areas if there is ancient woodland on there. Yeah. But if it's a specific location that people are concerned about, if people want to email me afterwards about it, I can always have a look at it for them. It's not a problem.
That's very kind of you. Can you make sure you give us your email before we finish?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll stick it in the chat now, and then we can.
Right. Okay. Now there's a question here from Olga. Saying that there was a project called 10,000 Trees for Rochdale. She happens to live there. Where does this fit into the City of Trees project? I believe they were giving trees free of charge to anyone who wanted to plant them. One could also presume that a similar offer could apply to this area too.
Yes, I guess that was Fran Cummins that had organised that. I don't tend to cover old Rochdale that much, so I couldn't say sort of how it fits in. I should imagine it'll have been part of the Pennine Edge Forest Initiative. But yeah, Dave, like if people want some trees, I'm sure we can help out with that in certain areas. Not necessarily giant standard trees, although that might be possible in some cases. But yeah, if they want some small trees, yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Right. Now, another question here from Roger, who says, has any thought been given to the detrimental effect of trees on the generation of solar power?
What, in terms of shading or planting onto sites where you could have had solar panels and now you're going to put trees?
I meant if you like, that's a counter cost, isn't it? In effect, if we're not generating solar because trees are blocking. I just wondered if that was factored in any way to the calculations that are done about the value of trees.
If I'm honest, probably no, Roger. No, I think there's probably more than enough roof space to go around, and probably not enough urban.
I speak specifically about the fact that we have a great big tree in someone else's garden which affects our solar panels, but there we go.
Okay, well, there's new street trees generally that go in. I'd say there's not many large high canopy cover trees that go in areas nowadays. That they tend to be a bit more selective in the species selection. But personally, I quite like to see more big high canopy trees in urban areas, but I do understand that there is a conflict for people's properties between those big sort of oaks and the like, when they can get quite high, can't they? But no, it's probably the answer, Roger. No and yes. Like I say, like the right tree in the right place generally is what, if it's going to cause a lot of damage in certain areas, then you wouldn't look to put quite a big one in. But not for solar panels, I wouldn't say.
Okay, thank you. Paul raises the issue of supermarkets and the fact that many of them have landscaped areas around their car parks and so on, often with lots of berry-bearing shrubs.
Yeah, really dodgy planting schemes.
Yeah, but many of them are neglected and get littered and all the rest of them. Is there any way in which City of Trees or any other organisation can pressure them into doing something about this and basically making them much more attractive and making sure the trees there are in good shape?
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? You'd think there'd be some more compulsion from a planning point of view to have landscape planting schemes that were a lot more beneficial. Sorry, let me just get that phone. Sorry about that. My wife left the phone right next to the laptop.
You can see everybody, yeah? Is everybody now in gallery view so you can see everybody else, yeah? Sorry, carry on, Sam.
Sorry, Alison. Yeah, potentially I'd go back to the guerrilla planting thing. I know people do that as well, don't they? Where they plant up bits of supermarkets and whatnot. But I think at a national level, there probably needs to be some sort of compulsion for better planting schemes. But it's difficult, isn't it? You can't really make supermarkets plant or force them to not be doing non-native, like cotoneasters and all that other stuff that goes in. But yeah, I guess at a local level, like some engagement with the supermarket once it's in might work. In Milnsbridge, where we were, where in Corn Valley where we are, there's an Aldi there, and there was a big sculpture that went in as part of a sculpture project, and it was a case of engaging with Aldi, and they set aside some land next to Aldi, and they even plugged in the sculpture, and it runs through from the Aldi. So quite good. So again, like if there's the potential to work with them at a local level, I'm sure we could get involved in helping to supply trees and tools and equipment if people wanted to improve the biodiversity and tree species mix within an area. I'm sure that could be done.
I think just
Yeah,
to add,
we have a comment from Richard, haven't we, about this? That the car park actually belongs to the council, so maybe there's a way forward there.
Yeah, well, definitely. So somebody let me know which car park it is, and we can have a look, because we just had we just ran a it was called the Urban Tree Challenge. So it was some money that we received from DEFRA to plant street trees, and last year we planted £1.5 million worth of street trees in soft landscaped areas across Greater Manchester. So there was money to do that, and there will be money in the future for street trees, and especially in soft landscaped areas, which are easier and cheaper to plant into. We're always looking for potential sites like that, and to have a pipeline of sites where we can go to in the future to know that they're there and they're available is good. So yeah, why not?
question from me on that sort of subject. There is, of course, a major new secondary school construction just starting in Diggle, and as far as I know, there's been no conversations about the landscaping of that site. Now, you may well know better than me, but it would seem an excellent opportunity to get some trees around the outside of it and break the wind for the playing fields and so on and so forth. And even better if pupils could be involved once the school opens. Are you aware of this, and is there any way we can get a bit of traction on that?
Yeah, I think it's the planning process, isn't it? I think the more comments that go into the planning authority, so you can access planning applications really easily through the planning portal for Oldham and every area. And if you make a presentation to the local planner and possibly direct to, they probably won't thank me for saying this because they won't want things coming through to them, but the Greater Manchester Ecology Unit are the group who make ecological comments on developments, and so they'll, if a planning application has been passed to them to make comment on by the local planner who's looking at that for Oldham, they'll make comment and they'll suggest whether there is or isn't enough green infrastructure in a development, and if there's going to be a loss of a decrease in ecological value from a development, they'll suggest mitigation for it and ways of improving or mitigating for it on or off site. So if there's a planning application that goes in that you don't think has enough or a green space or doesn't mitigate for the loss of green space that's come about from it, then yeah, I definitely make representations through the planning authority, and also possibly your local councillor as well. I guess that's what they're there for as well. I can speak to them.
Right, I see. Okay. Has anybody else got any questions? I seem to be asking too many at the moment. Other people should be asking things. Come on, everybody.
I've got a question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Two questions, really, if I may. The first is, how many people are there per apple tree in the area of your GIS? I ask that because apple trees are attractive in the springtime when they're in blossom, and they provide cheap, fresh fruit without food miles from September until December. And that's the first question, and I think it's quite important. The second one is, what consideration has been given to the ongoing maintenance costs of the planting schemes? I'm thinking particularly of what's happened in Sheffield, where the council engaged contractors to undertake responsibility for the trees, and it was in the financial interests of the contractors to chop down trees rather than to maintain them. And so it's not enough just to plant trees, it's necessary to ensure that their maintenance will not become an unacceptable burden in the future. So those are my two questions for you, if you're able to answer those.
Yeah, Rob, you don't have to sell me on fruit trees. I used to run the Greater Manchester Grafting for Orchards project. So yeah, I'm dead keen on, I surveyed all the ancient orchards around Greater Manchester and helped plant quite a lot of community ones as well. To give you an honest answer, I wouldn't know the ratio of population per orchard and or fruit tree in Greater Manchester or any district. But yeah, I take your point that, yeah, orchards, community-led or single fruit trees are like a real boon. I guess what you're getting at is maybe we should have included that within the tree and woodland strategy to focus specifically on improving the number of orchards in Greater Manchester. There's a couple in Saddleworth, isn't there? There's a few up on the top. There's a couple of, if you Google like Saddleworth orchards or look on Facebook, there's a couple of people doing it. There's one beautiful new orchard that's up there. And I know Abundance do quite a lot as well. And there's a fella called Rob Muir who lives in Mosley, but he's doing a lot, and he's opened up a cider and fruit place at Temperance Street on the Arches in Manchester. So there's quite a lot of like local initiatives in terms of fruit use for fruit juice and cider. But yeah, no, I take your point. There should be more, and there could be more. Having said that, we can help. We do plant a lot of community orchards and plan them. And in terms of helping with funding bids and or leveraging in other money from businesses or philanthropic donations, we can definitely help with that. So yeah, if people know of a site where potentially they think an orchard would work and there's support for it, yeah, that would be something we could look at. I think orchards are similar, especially community orchards, are quite similar to your next point, Rob. Like they need quite a lot of upkeep, especially in the early years, and with formative pruning and establishment. So for the funding stream that's coming up that we've got, there's 15 years of establishment money to help the woodlands establish and the trees to establish. After that, I do take your point that the onus would go back to the councils to manage those sites. But I like to think that with work like the iTree Eco Survey, and then iTree Eco Survey was done for Sheffield after or during the problems that came. One of the lads who worked with us on it for the Manchester iTree Survey worked on the Sheffield iTree Survey and gave a lot of data to councillors in Sheffield, and quite a lot of trees were saved through iTree Eco Surveys because they were able to point to the value that those trees provided to the local area in terms of health and well-being, but also the sort of like nuts and bolts of stopping flooding and cooling buildings and intercepting particulates and things like that. So I would like to think that like councils and or site managers are a lot more aware and of the value of trees on sites, and I think that's improving. But yeah, like I say, like as an establishment fee or an amount of money to develop or make sure that these trees are not only put in right, but got to a good standard to flourish in the future, that there is money to do that. I would say we're looking, some people might not agree with this actually is what I'm going to say now, like, but there is some other mechanisms that we're looking at that are coming forward, and this isn't just City of Trees, this is nationwide, for funding tree planting in the future. So there are things like the Woodland Carbon Code. So what this does is you can in effect sell the carbon that's sequestered from your trees to people to offset from their business and use that to manage the woods. So there's quite a lot of that that's being looked at the moment. And also you have what's called the GM Environment Fund that's being looked at the moment. So this is a fund that's managed by the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and overseen by the Wildlife Trust. What it'll do is, if a development is being put up in Greater Manchester and there isn't what's called net gain for biodiversity, so if they can't improve the biodiversity on that site after the building has been put up, they would be required to pay into a fund or to fund environmental improvements elsewhere within Greater Manchester. So that will be a fund that can be used and for ongoing, not just woodland management, but habitat management across Greater Manchester. So that's another initiative that's being looked at. And there is also what they call a biodiversity metric that's used to measure that. So that'll look at how much biodiversity has been lost as part of the development and how much biodiversity you need to improve elsewhere to mitigate for that. So there are two other things that are going on. Some people don't necessarily agree with commoditizing the environment, but and I'm a bit uncomfortable with it, if I'm honest. But at the same time, if that's the only way that you can make people accountable for the habitat that's been destroyed because of a development, I think it's a good thing. So yeah, quite a long answer that, Rob, I think, but hopefully that's useful. I can elaborate on any other parts of it.
We've got time for one more question, I think.
Oh, I've got a question as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay for longer, Dave, if needs be. I don't mind.
Let's see what people say. But Martin down in London has got a question for you. I don't know whether you can answer one from London, but if you give it a try, Martin, what's your question, mate?
Hi, yes, sorry, this is, your refugee question, shall we say, from London. I just wondered, I mean, I saw in your data that you said you had 11.3 million trees that you'd found and that your aim was to produce more than 1 tree per person. What is I just wondered whether you've actually already achieved that perhaps in Greater Manchester. So perhaps you've exceeded your quota, but that's just an observation. Now, what I wanted to ask was, when you do your counting, do you count trees only on the streets or do you include the gardens? Because one of the interesting things that has turned out, and I just put the link on the chat area, is that if you count the gardens, it turns out that where I happen to live, which is in Camden, right bang in central London, has many more trees than a substantial number of rural areas. For example, than the Lake District, like loads more than the Lake District, which is one of the lowest.
Yeah, well, the Lake District's an absolute travesty in terms of.
I know,
like,
and it has
the
lowest area in the whole country is South Holland, which is just to the west of the Wash, which has the lowest number of trees in the whole blooming country. So I just wonder whether we are actually focused. I mean, all in favor of everybody planting trees every square inch they can get it. I'm not trying to argue that, but I just wonder whether our, if we're looking at the sort of global picture in terms of the UK, whether we shouldn't be concentrating on the impoverished rural areas rather than the cities.
Yeah, I can answer that, Martin. There's two. If you look at I'll see if I can find it as I'm talking to you. There's the project that was done by the University of Manchester, and it looks specifically at green infrastructure in gardens across Manchester. It's called, I think it's called In My Backyard. So I'll try and put or In My Yard, something like that. If I can't find it, I'll show it. Yeah, and that looked a lot about how people could improve their gardens in Greater Manchester. But to answer your iTree survey, it was done completely randomly. So we looked at an awful lot of gardens, and we had to knock on an awful lot of doors and ask people if we could measure their trees in their front gardens and their back gardens. And so that data is completely representative of trees and back gardens, like and every other type of. And we also went to the length of when you do a random survey like that, there's a lot of sites that you can't get access to, like people's gardens. And so what you do is you replace the surveys with other new survey areas. But what we did is we made sure that we stratified. It's getting a bit technical, this, but we stratified the habitat types to include urban residential areas. So there is a data layer that you can look at people's back gardens. So what we did is if we replaced the garden that we couldn't get in access to, we made sure it was another garden that we resurveyed. So yeah, it does completely take into account back gardens, and yeah, of course they're super important. And yeah, some of the best surveys were back gardens. They had this one lady who was like her daughter-in-law wouldn't eat her apples because they'd fallen on the tree, and she was absolutely gutted because I think she wanted a daughter-in-law that would bake apple pies and stuff like that. She made me take like all of the apples in her garden. I had like bags and bags full of these apples and that. So it was yeah, it was a great survey. Yeah.
Right. Okay. One very last question, Kirsty.
Hi. Yes. I read an article a while ago, and it was talking about trees in urban areas, and about how some ages ago, a very long time ago, somebody said that if you plant certain trees then in urban areas, then you won't get sap dropping on people, and you won't get seed pods and different things like that dropping on people. So in a lot of urban areas, a lot of trees were planted that were specific. It was to do with male and female trees, and they only planted one particular type. I'm not sure which. So consequently, we've got an imbalance of trees in a lot of urban areas that means that it's actually having a negative effect on especially people with asthma, to do with the pollen, because you haven't got a balance of the male and the female trees. And I just wondered whether those kind of things are taken into consideration when you're doing your surveys and you're planting.
Probably not, Kirsty, to be honest. Like, no, like there is a an inventory for most councils have an inventory for street trees because they have to survey them, and so there's probably a species list, but in terms of the different councils have different data, and obviously a lot of trees aren't on council land or public realm. A lot of them are on private land, and so yeah, I wouldn't. Some cities do. I think Melbourne's pretty good with that, in terms of looking at the species mix and also looking at the age structure of them. But I wouldn't say any of the districts look at the species mix of their street trees. They probably look at the age, but that's only from a risk point of view. They don't model it. But the iTree survey that we did does allow you to model. So it looks at the age structure of an area, and it will tell you how many trees you're going to lose because of the age of them. So if people were inclined, they could use our data to look at that and see what what they were deficient in terms of trees and what they would need to plant to stand still. So yeah, that data is available, but it's the tree and woodland strategy is fairly new. So the councils have only got it this year. So what we're going to be doing now over the next few years is working with councils to look at local strategies for them, for their districts, to dig into this data and say, okay, right, what do we want to do with this? Where are the gaps? Where is it showing us that we want to plant those trees? So no, it's a great point. Like we can definitely look at it, and it'll be looked at, hopefully, sort of driven by what the council's goals are. But so we're there to help and advise. But yeah, like going forward, or in the future rather, that's what we'll be doing.
Okay, thank you. I'm very conscious that although there's still some unanswered questions, we're also running out of time. Alison, should we stop now or do we keep going?
Have we got anything left in the chat? I think Rosie asked something about
Rosie's asked one, Olga's asked something.
Yeah, I can answer about hedges. Yeah, we took hedges into account as long as they had a wide enough DBH. So as long as they were about, I think it was DBH is diameter at breast height. So as long as they were 5 centimeters or wider diameter, then we'd count them in the hedge. And that was an absolute pain as well, Rosie, because we had to count every tree in the hedge and measure them, measure the heights and all that. And it took hours and hours. We had one plot and it had over 100 trees in it, because they're only small plots. And it took us like 3 days just to do one plot. So yeah, like we took hedges into account. But yeah, we didn't do shrubs because shrubs would have been an absolute, because there was so many more non-native shrubs, and it was really hard to do a lot of them. It's really hard to do a lot of the non-native trees as well a lot of the time, but we got most of them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Right, okay. Do I take it, Sam, that if people have some other questions, they can drop you an email later?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just send me an email. And if people want to have a chat on Zoom or anything like that, I'm more than happy to speak to people about stuff.
That's brilliant. Okay, so look, I'd like to say a very big thank you, Sam, to you and for City of Trees.
Yeah, no problem.
If City of Trees, you know, has a website. It's got an email, team@cityoftrees.org.uk, and Sam's given you his personal email. Now, just to let everybody know what's happening next, this talk has been the last in this series of 3 talks. We had intended that there would be 4, but the last one hasn't proved possible to deliver, I'm afraid, at the moment. So we're going to take a break from the podcast for the moment, but Saddleworth Hydro hopes to have something new and exciting for our community before too long. We never give up. Now, the organising group is now going to stay online to discuss a few ideas, and if any of you in the audience would like to join in, you're very welcome to stay online as well and join in this discussion. To the rest of you, thank you for joining us. Keep safe, and we'll see you before very long. And Sam, I'll drop you a line later on. Thank you very much indeed for an excellent talk.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Night, everyone.
Yeah.